And welcome to a Five Angry Men podcast. Here to talk a little NBA draft with Jack Duffy. I am Chris Drain. How's it going, Jack?
I'm doing well. How are you, Chris?
Pretty good, pretty good. A little late to be going over the NBA draft, but a little, or better late than never, I always say. So I got to ask first off, how do you think your Knicks did in the draft?
I think the Knicks got great value with Bargnani at 9. He may be a little past his prime, but he's on a great deal. He's actually not being paid anything right now, so I think it's a steal for the Knicks.
Yeah, a lot of Knicks fans are probably bummed the Knicks didn't get in the draft, but I think they did better than some teams who were actually in the draft. Sacramento.
Hmm.
So I think we're just going to go over some trades, mostly go over the first round. We know that there is a second round, but it's kind of a crapshoot, so it doesn't really help us to analyze it. So we'll just get into the first trade. The first one, biggest trade of the night, I think. Thunder getting Oladipo, Big Ursan, love Ursan, and Sabonis for Serge Ibaka. What'd you think of the trade?
Well, initially I thought, OKC just robbed Orlando with, Ibaka's expiring contract and his dip in play. They were able to get not only the 11th pick, and when I was discussing his value with some people, we gauged it just alone on maybe the Raptors at 9, and but apparently they got someone to bite, and they were able to get the 11th pick along with Oladipo. Oladipo should be able to allow them to not resign, not have to pay waiters, which I love me some Dion, but if you don't have to pay money, go let him score points somewhere else. And then Sabonis, I'm not high on him, but they just need him to be a serviceable big between him, Cantor, and Adams. And how Durant showed he could play at the 4 in the playoffs, if he were to come back, I think they'd be the team to beat in the Western Conference and, challenge the Cavs pretty largely. And then for the Magic, I don't know what their moves have been. They have all these young players and they keep making these weird moves. Seems like they're selling low on everyone, but Ibaka could be a good pairing next to Vucevic, or if they want to play small with Aaron Gordon at the 4. But if Ibaka gets a larger role and can produce, then it's not a terrible trade. But just based off what we've seen last year and the fact that he's expiring, it's a little questionable from Orlando's side.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I think the thing for the Thunder is it gives them even more lineup flexibility, which is something that they really excelled in the playoffs. And I think Sabonis he'll be a solid big in the NBA. He's huge. He's relatively skilled, has a decent jump shot out to about 15 feet. So I'm probably a little higher on him than you are. Ursan, just a stretch 4, not nearly as good as Serge. And Oladipo is just a solid defender. He's kind of like, he plays a lot like Dion Waiters, but he's just generally better at everything.
Yeah.
So that's definitely an upgrade at that position for them.
They don't have to pay him this year.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's huge. And then for the Magic, they get Serge, which, one thing I heard that I never heard before is there's been a lot of concerns apparently about Serge's actual age. He's 26 right now, but a lot of people tend to think he's actually 30 or 31, which is insane to me because I've heard so many things about age this week when it comes to the draft. We'll talk about that later. But yeah, for the Magic, it just kind of confuses me. It seems like they give up a lot of value for a guy in Serge Ibaka, but I don't know how it really worked with Kevin Durant, Russell, and Serge being a far distant third. So he might have wanted out too. So overall, the deal is just kind of. I at first, like you said, I thought the Thunder robbed them, but it's kind of just Oladipo's good, but how good is he really? Sabonis may pan out, but overall, the deal I thought was fine for each side.
Yeah. For the Thunder, obviously it depends if Durant comes back or not. If he doesn't, it might even be a better deal because they get a little younger. And all they really need is from Sabonis is there are a lot of good power forwards in the West. So the only, between him and Cantor, they can play some serviceable minutes at the 4 to defend the bigger bodies. Then that's all they really need.
Yeah. The other part of this trade is, do you think this affects Kevin Durant's free agency decision at all?
I don't think it affects it negatively at all. If it makes the team better, I think it'll only help him in a positive aspect because he seems like he was friends with Serge, but Serge seemed to I remember reading pieces of Serge complaining about not touching the ball, and I think Durant understands that they're trying to make the team better with adding more depth and
Yeah.
the guard they've been lacking.
Yeah, I definitely think Serge wanted to be more involved. He wanted to get more shots up. I think he thinks he should be an all-star, which is just not going to happen when you're on a team where Russell and Kevin Durant dominate the ball.
Yeah.
All right, and you have to imagine that they got Kevin Durant's approval on this trade, right? Like you
Yeah, I
have
would
to
say
imagine
they
they
had
at
to
least yeah,
talk to
they could.
him.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, overall just a pretty solid deal.
Yeah, we'll see.
Let's move on to we're gonna kind of package these two deals together because they involve the same team. Sacramento trading out of the 8 spot to get 13 and 28 and the great Bojan Bogdanovic.
And
And then their next deal, they
a
trade
second
for the
rounder.
22nd. Oh, and a second rounder. Good call. And the next deal was they traded for the 22nd pick for Bellinelli, which so package that together. Let's just talk what the Sacramento Kings did in this draft in general.
So when the trade for 8 came through, I didn't think it was a terrible trade, just because they really needed a guard. Well, that's what most thought they needed. And when at 8, all the guards are gone, so anything at 8 would have been a bit of a reach. So trading back a couple spots, picking up an asset in Bogdanovich and the 28th pick, I thought it was a decent deal. But then they go out and draft two centers Scott Scal, who knows what he is, but he's a center power forward. When they already have three centers, actual centers on the roster, and they try to play Boogie at the power forward, but that's not his position. So after the picks, I would say I don't know what's going on with them, but you actually do know what's going on with them because they're always make terrible decisions. I
Yeah,
will say though the Bellinelli aspect, the fact that the Hornets gave up the 22nd pick for Bellinelli seems pretty ridiculous.
yeah. I think the best move for Sacramento was that Bellinelli trade. Who knew Bellinelli could get a first round pick?
Jeez.
Turned into Malachi Richardson, who I'm sure we both love. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think Charlotte's just trying to clear space. But
Yeah, they're going to be well over the cap, bringing back all their guys, which kind of odd because none of them are
that good.
stars. And I like Nick Batum. I like Marvin Williams. I think Lynn's gone, but I don't know. It seems like you're just going to hang around in the 5th seed, no center.
Yeah.
As far as back to the 8th trade, for the Suns, I think it's pretty good because they don't need more. They consolidated young assets and traded up and got another home run swing for Marquise Chris. Well, pairing him with Bender, which is interesting, but I guess the thinking is, they're both high upside, low floor players. So the thinking is at least one of them hits.
Mm-hmm.
And both of them are pretty versatile, so they can end up playing together. So I like it in the Suns' standpoint, and they definitely didn't need any other guards, so I think
Yeah.
that was pretty solid for them.
Yeah, I think the Suns did great. They were looking at Chris at the 4 spot, and they went with Bender, obviously. And so to get him at 8 is insane value because Chris was considered probably, besides from the top 2, the highest upside guy on the board.
Yeah.
I think Phoenix can see Chris possibly playing the 3 next to Bender, which is interesting because he's unbelievably athletic, long. He can probably guard some threes in the NBA. So if he can end up being more of a 3, then this might be a huge draft for them.
Yeah.
But back to Sacramento, not only do they trade back, but they get Papagiannis and Scal with those 2 picks, and it's just, what are you doing? Just Vladi, just stop it. It would make sense if they were planning on trading Boogie Cousins. Well, it wouldn't make sense, but it would at least help if they were like, oh, well, we're actively shopping Boogie Cousins to get some guard depth. But they're not.
Yeah.
So it's just like, oh, God, it's just the worst run franchise in all of sports, and there's nothing you can do except for just shake your head.
Yeah, the Scal pick, if it was any other team that didn't already have 40 centers, it's a pretty good value just because he was not less than a year ago like a top 2 ranked player in his recruiting class. So, I wouldn't have a problem with anyone picking him there. But when you already drafted some, can't say I've watched too much Georgios Papagiannis. However, I do remember when researching Maryland basketball, he was signed between there and St. John's, but ended up staying overseas. So I don't know what they're doing. I guess they got to be looking to unload the Kufis, the other Greek, because there's no room for him. And I was always confused with the Boogie Willie Cauley Stein pairing, anyways, with the direction that the NBA is headed in with the smaller lineups, shooters, and Cauley Stein is great, but he's got to play next to like a true stretch four, like a Kevin Love or something like that. He's not really useful next to a guy that's sitting in the paint most of the time, even though he's been chucking up threes this past season.
Yeah, I don't know if going into the draft, I thought I could come out of the draft more confused with the direction Sacramento was going, but they found a way.
Mm-hmm.
And another team that found a way to get worse, the Brooklyn Nets and their trade. They found a way. It was tough. It was tough. But now I think it's official. They're the worst team in basketball. Trading away one of their good players, Thaddeus Young, for the 20th pick, who they turned into Karis LeVert. And a big reach at him there, especially with his injury history. What do you think of that deal?
Yeah, so honestly, I thought they probably could have gotten a bit higher for Thad Young, considering he's I'd say he's a starter. He's one of those 3-4 combos that can guard the bigger guys, but also get up and down the floor. And I do we think Harrison Barnes is that much better than Thad Young? I haven't compared their stats, but he can't really shoot, I guess, like Harrison Barnes can, but he definitely is a player that can help your team win, and he's a starting caliber player. And with the cap jump, I think he's locked in for 3 more years at $12 million. That's pretty much a steal. So I like the deal.
Contract.
Yeah, I like the deal a lot for the Pacers because they're not going to get any impact guy like Thad Young at 20. At least that's going to make an impact these next couple of seasons. So now they get to play their fast tempo. They got Teague pushing the ball, Monte Ellis maybe off the bench with Paul George and Thad playing the 3-4 combo, and then Miles Turner at center. So it's a good deal for them. And then for Brooklyn, probably not who I would have picked. I mean, we could be biased, but I think we'd both say we'd rather have taken Malachi because he's younger, no injury history. But it does. At least they were able to get an asset for him. And yeah, they're gonna be pretty bad. We'll see what they get in free agency, but hopefully they're not too bad because I can't really take listening to Celtics fans about how great all their picks are, even though they keep continuing to just get role players that doesn't really win you playoff games.
Yeah, no, I think the 20th pick of LeVert there, I think that's where his talent dictates him to go, but his injury history should definitely push him much further back than that. But I guess if your doctors aren't concerned, then just go with the guy you like. But I mean, whatever about Brooklyn, but I really like what Indiana's done these last 2 weeks, adding Teague, adding Thaddeus Young, really trying to put the pieces around Paul George, Monte, and a growing Miles Turner to really try to make a push to be top 4 in the East. I don't think they're that far off. I mean, they almost won a playoff series this year. So I'm really encouraged by what the Pacers are doing. Got a new coach, got a new identity. Really trying to move forward here. Larry Bird's done some really nice things for that team.
Yeah, I like the direction they're headed. I'm a Monte Ellis. I think they might move on from him if they could. But I think he's best suited for a super 6-man role. If they can go after a 3-point shooter, start at the 2 position, I think they could really be a threat. That and either bring back Mahimi or another bench big, or maybe start. They'd be quite a pretty solid team. I could see Neb in the 5th or 4th seed, depending on the movement of the rosters in the East.
Yeah, I think a lot of this depends on free agency, obviously. But if you look at the rosters in the East right now, I think Indiana is easily in the top 4. They have a stud in Paul George and a very, very solid supporting cast around them. So I'm very high on Indiana, so to speak. I think now we'll just kind of transition to go through the draft board, just go through the lottery, see what teams did, see what we like, see what we didn't like. So do you have any comments on the first two picks? I mean, they were pretty standard. I'm sure we like both these guys.
Yeah, pretty straightforward. Not too, it's been covered for almost weeks, so not too much to comment on with either of these two. One interesting thing with the Sixers is they're trying to unload one of their big men, and they still need to do that.
Mhm.
It'll be interesting to see which one I would personally move on from Noel. But if they want Simmons to play the four, I don't know. It's gonna be an interest. They probably need more of a rim protector than Jaleel. So that's an interesting decision. Uh, but we'll talk about more about the free agency aspect later on. For the Lakers, Ingram was the best pick available, and I think he fits in well. He can shoot. They got Clarkson and Russell to distribute the ball, and he'll space with Randall. Now they just got to worry about their defense because we'll see maybe Whiteside. Who knows?
Yeah, I think Ingram. They'll keep his position pretty open because they'll want to get him minutes and develop him. I think Ben Simmons is very interesting because you can play him in a lot of different ways. And a lot of people don't know this, but Brett Brown actually coached him when he played for Australian youth teams. So he kind of knows him already. So it'll be interesting to see what they do with him there. But where the draft really started was at number 3 with the Celtics. And I don't think a lot of people going into the draft thought the Celtics would actually take anyone at number 3. I think a lot of people thought they'd get a trade done, but they didn't, and they picked Jaylen Brown out of Cal. What do you think about that?
Yeah, so if I were the Celtics there and if I was going to make the pick, it would have been Jamal Murray out of Kentucky because he has upside and they need a guard that can shoot. I was really surprised with the Jaylen Brown pick because I thought if they were going to go for a forward with, that athleticism potential, I thought it would be Bender or Chris. They go to Jaylen Brown, who seems to be like his ceiling is a carbon copy of how well Jake Crowder played last
Yeah,
season,
yeah,
which is a great player, but that's not what you're looking for at number 3. And you already have essentially two of those guys in Avery Bradley and Jay Crowder, so I don't really see where Jaylen Brown fits in. Um, it's just definitely another, Ainge has made great trades, but his pick history is kind of questionable when you look back at it. And this one is another confusing one for me, but we'll see what they can do in free agency. But he's gonna, it doesn't make much sense when for a number 3 pick to be coming off the bench, but there's no real room for him to start.
yeah. No, the Jaylen Brown pick surprised me. I personally thought they'd go with Chris Dunn. I thought he was the best player on the board, but it just seems like the Celtics can't hit that home run. They just keep hitting singles, and singles isn't going to get you a championship, which is their ultimate goal. And I tend to like Jaylen Brown. Um, he's got the NBA body. He looks a lot like Stanley Johnson last year when he came out, except even bigger. So that's nice. And he put up decent numbers at Cal, but a lot of people say they're hollow numbers. He scored a lot in like open dunks in transition just because he was so athletic. But I guess we'll see what he can turn into. I mean, he's got the body already, so it's really just developing his skills. But obviously, the Celtics were bummed with how their draft went. I would say they were probably the biggest losers in the draft, even with Sacramento there, just because they had such high hopes going into it.
Yeah, that's it. I definitely agree. Sacramento is definitely a bigger loser, but when you consider the ups, no one expected anything out of them, but they defy expectations anyways. But the Celtics definitely, a lot of people were expecting big things, and they, in my opinion, let their fans down.
Yeah,
Um,
I completely agree with you. Boston sports fans are demanding, and I do not think they were happy on Friday morning.
yeah.
So the next pick was Dragon Bender to the Suns. Power forward out of Maccabi, Tel Aviv in Israel. Big guy. Um, a guy who I personally love, so I'm a big fan of this pick. High upside, but a low floor, like you said earlier. What do you think of him?
Well, it's back before I talk about Bender to the Boston fans. I don't feel bad for Boston fans. I just, they did disappoint him. We can get into that some other time. But, anyways, moving on to Bender. Yeah, great pick for the Suns, especially since they got able to eventually get him and Chris.
Hmm.
Um, they signed Chandler. I think he's ended up just being a veteran on the bench. So, a little European backcourt of Ben or front court, sorry, of Bender and Len is quite interesting.
Yeah.
Um, if he's I think a year and a half younger than Porzingis.
Hmm.
like when Porzingis was drafted. I think he's 28 months
Yeah.
now. So, he's got the upside and he can shoot the three. With the European players, you never know. Seems to be a lot of hit or miss. But recently with, Jokic and others, Porzingis, there's been some good success, but that likely means there's going to be a flop soon. So hopefully for the Sun case, it's not Bender.
Yeah, they're really swinging for the fences with Bender, but he's a guy who I personally like. He carved out a little bit of a role with Tel Aviv, but down towards the end of the season, he didn't play too much. So it's a lot of just potential with him. People have seen some flashes, so that kind of concerns you, and that's how it is a lot with international guys. You just don't see enough of them or as much of them as you see the college guys, so they kind of get hard
Mm-hmm.
to gauge a bit.
Yeah. Yep.
And then I think probably the steal of the night for me at least, and I hope you feel the same way. Chris Dunn going 5 to the Timberwolves. Tibbs loves this kid.
Yeah. I like Chris Dunn's talent a lot. And the only thing that's I personally preferred Murray to Dunn, but the only thing that the reasoning for that was because of Dunn's shoulder issues. Rather than that, Dunn's a phenomenal player. His background story is incredible. I don't know if you've read anything about that or
Mhm.
listened to that. It's pretty amazing. It'll be interesting with him and Rubio. I would think they move on from Rubio. I don't know where he'd go, but they can't play. I don't think they can be on the court at the same time. And maybe this season they let the Dunn come off the bench, but he looks ready, like the most ready to start out of everyone that was drafted. So I don't know. I think it's probably time to move on from Rubio. They almost traded him to. Well, who knows how close they were actually to, but the discussions with Chicago for Jimmy Butler, that was an interesting one. I think the value would have been fair, Chris Dunn and Levine for Butler, but as far as from where the Timberwolves are in their timeline and the amount of young talent they have, I wouldn't have done the trade if I were the Timberwolves, and I also wouldn't have done the trade if I were the Bulls, um, just because, as we've seen, like with the Celtics, they're trying to get a star. They took Jaylen Brown, but it's incredibly hard to get a player that you can rely upon and that's a star night in, night out. And for the Bulls, I just think I don't know why people thought they were rebuilding. They really just traded Derrick Rose to my Knicks, who unfortunately it's not a big piece, so it's not like they're really tearing down their team. But back to the Wolves, great pick, and between him, Carl Anthony Towns, and Wiggins, I mean, and Levine, honestly, he played pretty well last year when he wasn't forced to play point guard. They have quite the core, and it'll be definitely a top candidate for a league pass team.
Yeah, I agree with you. Rubio will be interesting to see what they do. I imagine at first they'll let Dunn come off the bench because Dunn, even in college, was very turnover prone. And with the game getting faster in the NBA, I could see that being an issue early on. But by the end of the year, or not by the end of the year, by the All-Star break, I could see them moving on from Rubio, trying to sell on him when they give Dunn the reins. I love this guy. He's great defensively. His jump shot, and as I mentioned before, turnovers can be an issue at times, but I tend to think he's going to be a very, very solid NBA starter for years to come. And Tibbs is just in love with this guy. And apparently the rest of the league is too, because he almost fetched Jimmy Butler. I mean, that's pretty insane to think about a draft pick at number 5 in a draft that wasn't considered very good after the top 2, almost getting a bona fide all-star, two-way player. So that's pretty crazy.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, it'll be interesting. I'm definitely excited to watch him progress in his rookie year and then throughout.
Yeah, definitely the number 1 league pass team to watch. I think they just got ahead of my Bucks, but that's all right. I'm okay with it. The next pick was Buddy Hield, the National Player of the Year, to New Orleans, a team who definitely needed a shooting guard and some scoring next to Anthony Davis.
Yep. So, he's probably between him or Dunn, second most NBA ready player in the draft as far as knowing what he needs to do, coming in and contributing. The comparison is JJ Redick, which for the 6th pick, you're hoping he can do a bit more than Redick. Redick's had a great career, but I get for the Pelicans, they need more than just a really good role player. But in worst case scenario, if that's all he is, paired with Anthony Davis, you can get some more shooters around him, and I like the pairing of him and Holiday, uh, especially since Holiday's more very strong defensively. Allows Heel to not have to take much of a burden, and good pick. Again, I probably would have went Murray, but I understand why they went Heel because they're looking to win now. They made the playoffs 2 seasons ago, and they should be back there this year with one of the best players in the league in Davis.
Yeah, Buddy Hield, definitely a proven guy out of college. He can shoot the ball. And I mean, if your floor is JJ Redick, as you said before, that's a pretty solid pick. Like I like JJ Redick personally. So yeah, they definitely need some scoring and some shooting next to Davis, and him with Drew Holiday can definitely work. New Orleans had a huge down year last year, but hopefully this Buddy Hield pick makes it all worth it for them. But I guess only time will tell. So the next pick was to the Nuggets. It's your guy, Jamal Murray. I'll let you go off on him.
He's not, I wouldn't say he's my guy, but I liked how he was a freshman and was able to dominate the game. That was
Yeah.
my big thing with him.
Yeah, it was impressive.
But the Nuggets have like 15 players, and they're all decent quality. It's just adding another one. I will say he'll start at the 2 because Gary Harris seems more like a 6-man type. I don't think he's of starter quality. But Murray for them, he provides shooting and is able to do some ball handling to alleviate Moutier, who had one of the worst statistical years for a rookie. He was one of the lowest, or I should say highest negative plus minuses in the league. So just they took the best player available, and eventually, hopefully, they'll be able to figure out who to keep and who to move on from, and shape out their roster to where they can actually form a team with some continuity and able to develop some chemistry.
Yeah, I think the Murray pick, as you said, was just a value pick. It was just the best player available on their board, and that's what it was going to be when you get to the bottom of these top 8, because I think the top 8 guys were pretty consensus, and then we weren't really sure what the order was going to be 3 through 8, but we knew basically the players that were going to go in there. And at this point, I didn't think Denver really wanted to go with their front court, so they just like, okay, let's get a tandem in the backcourt. Let's get Moody next to Murray. Let's see how that works. And they're just rebuilding there. And I generally like the young talent they have. I'm a Gary Harris fan. I agree. Think he could be a very good 6-man on a team. So, and Jamal Murray scoring, like he averaged 19 points a game as a freshman. Like there aren't a lot of people that do that, especially on a team that had a ton of McDonald's All-Americans and a ton of talent on it. He was the guy taking the most shots. And that's really impressive. So I'm a big Murray guy too. Little questions about his defense, but people don't learn defense until they get to the NBA a lot of times.
Exactly.
Yeah, next guy is a guy we've talked about a little bit, Marquise Chris, ultra athletic, going to the Suns next to Dragon Bender. Possibly could play a little small forward, as I said earlier. You got anything to add on him?
I didn't watch too much Washington basketball.
Can't blame you.
Pac-12 late at night, but I watched some highlights of him, and I understand the intrigue. But like with Bender, he's hit or miss, a lot of upside, real low floor. If he's able to bulk up, he could definitely be a very energetic rebounder at the very worst. But I do like, his size is very intriguing. And for a team like Phoenix, why not swing for the fences? Because you're not going to be good for a while anyways, and you really need people to surround Devin Booker with, even though they have 2 guards that are a little older that they pay a bunch of money for, but we'll talk about that some other time.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, the Suns, they're just building for the future, and they got 2 guys in their front court. Their backcourt's pretty solidified right now with Bledsoe and Knight and Booker, as you said. So just trying to swing for the fences on the front court with 2 guys who I think are definitely worth it. So go Suns. They'll probably be fun to watch next year too.
Yeah, depending how well they manage their minutes.
That's true.
Last year when they were playing their Len Chandler lineups, it was pretty brutal. But at least Booker got to put up a bunch of shots, so that was fun.
Yeah, that's nice. Next guy, probably the safest pick, a lot of people would say up to this point. Jakob Poeltl from Utah, center. Just 7'1", just a beast. He's just large. I mean, that's really all I know about him. He scored a lot in college, but he's just a big guy. pretty solid at everything. He's not really athletic. He's not really fast. He's not really a great finisher. He's just pretty solid. He's probably just going to be a starting center in the NBA.
Yeah, interesting pick for a team who already has his ideal role carved out in the NBA in Valanciunas. So, I guess they see him now as a backup center, which means no more Bismack, which is probably good because they can't afford to pay him
Yeah,
anyways.
they're
But
definitely punting on Bismack with this pick.
I like the pick. He'll be able to be a really good backup center. And Valanciunas does struggle with injuries, so that'll be something to watch out for. And worst case scenario, they trade him at some point. But just a little side note, this is the Knicks pick, and it's we got Bargnani for this pick, so it's pretty solid overall. And especially with
Yeah.
trading Rolo, it would have been nice to have someone like Total playing center for us. But not you can't really have anything nice. So
Yeah, I tend to not really love this pick just because I'm a guy in the draft who I like to swing for the fences. I like to go for high upside guys, and Pirtle's like I can't really see him becoming any more than just a 25, 30-minute guy as a center, just kind of doing some decent things, just playing some solid defense. Like he's just not a fun pick. And I tend to think that normally doesn't pay off, but I guess we'll see.
yeah, I mean, but if you look at the picks after him, it's kind of tough to see who they would have won. I guess Ellenson, the stretch four, who you like a lot,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't know. He's kind of
Yeah.
slow, so they can just draft another slow guy to play behind Valanciunas, I guess.
Yeah. So moving on from that, number 10 with the Bucks. From here on out, the draft got really weird. I think we can both agree on that. It
Yes.
just got weird. The Bucks go with Thon Maker, a guy who I don't even know if he was technically should have been draft eligible. They said he was. Moved around. He has a crazy story too, escaping from Sudan to Australia to the U.S. to Canada. Came in and has somehow got to be an international prospect. So he's in the draft, and the Bucks choose him at 10, way above where they probably should have. What do you think of the Thon Maker pick?
Well, I remember seeing it on Twitter before it was announced. And then I think Chad Ford tweeted out a couple hours before the draft that he heard they were going to take him at 10. But I was still pretty surprised because with his age questions and just the Bucks needed a guard more than anything. It seemed like, from what I saw, just someone that could create, because I wouldn't really be ready to rely on Giannis yet, especially if you want to be a playoff team. But I mean, he has the upside. Who knows with the age thing? But not looking at that, he has their length that they are in love with. But they also just paid John Henson, so it's kind of an interesting. They have $28 million between John Henson and Monroe, and I guess they won't bring back Plumlee now. We'll see about that. I don't know who else I would have went with here. Maybe Wade Baldwin. That's probably a reach. But I would have, for them, they need, your Bucks need some depth. I would have maybe tried to trade down with someone, pick up a couple picks, but we'll see with their home run. You said you like the home run swing. We'll see what you get with Maker.
Yeah, the Bucks tried to trade down, I believe, but they just didn't get a deal they liked. Maker was not on my radar. I am a Bucks fan, and I was distraught after this pick. I hated it. However, I didn't know much about him. I knew the age questions, which I do have to say, Jonathan Gavoni of Draft Express today called Reddit nonsense. So that made me feel a little better. But I mean, who really knows? Like, we're never gonna actually know, and it's gonna follow him for the rest of his career. A couple things I do like about Maker are obviously his elite measurables. He's 7'1", 7'4" wingspan. Great vertical, just a overall great athlete. And a lot of people are saying he has a really low floor, like he would just be out of the league in 2 years. But I don't necessarily see that, because he plays with great energy, great motor. He's 7'1", and if he fills out a little bit, there's a spot in the league for a guy who's 7'1" who plays with great energy. Like he'll be on a roster. So I don't necessarily see how people think he's going to be out of the league. But overall, I mean, it really is a home run swing. I mean, they got it right with Giannis, and I guess they're just going to hope for it again. Doing some deep diving into him, it's like there are some things to like, but there are some things that you just hate. Like he apparently has a terrible basketball IQ, and when you watch some of his games, he just chucks from all over the floor. I know it is high school, but it's just like some of the things he does are just come on, man. He averaged 7 turnovers a game in Canada in high school, which is just terrible. But Thon Maker, it's just kind of you throw your hands up, whatever. Like I guess come back to me in 2 years, and I'll let you know what I think of this pick.
Yeah, we'll see. Unfortunately, I could see him being out of the league just because, I don't remember if you remember back to old drafts, these centers from Senegal in the top 5 that just never show up. Now it looks like he'll show up, so we'll see, and he'll be there for 4 years. But
Yeah,
I don't know, it's risky, but that's
yeah, it
not
definitely is risky.
not too insightful, but not too much more to say other than if he comes in, blocks some shots, and hits some threes, and he does his job. But I don't think when the Bucks drafted Giannis, Chad Ford said he's 2 years away from being an NBA player, and he turned out to be wrong, which I'm sure they're hoping with Thon. But I think it's a lot more realistic. He's 2 years away from being any sort of NBA player.
Yeah, I agree with you. There are a lot of people who are much higher on Giannis coming out than there seem to be Thon. So I guess we'll see. I mean, apparently, from what I hear in the draft, like what won the Bucks over in the draft workout, he absolutely dominated Bryce Johnson. Like Bryce Johnson just could not check him. So I guess that's a good sign, but it's just one workout. So it seems like kind of tough to take your 10th pick. It's a big investment for a guy who you don't really know a lot about.
Mm-hmm.
So moving on, we already talked about Sabonis, so we good to just kind of skip Sabonis. He's
Yeah,
just
that's
kind of
fine with me.
meh.
We can
He's
skip
kind of meh.
Papagiannis too.
Okay. 12 was the other huge surprise in the lottery, aside from Papagiannis. Taurean Prince, a guy who was not on anyone's radar to go this high, seen as a late first round pick, probably around 23 to 30 range. Could have gone in there, going all the way up to 12. What do you think of this?
Yeah, well, I think we discussed in the last pod, players out of Baylor have not worked out too well to start with. And then, not to just, go off his looks and be one of those people with the dreads, but he pretty much looks like a DeMar Carroll game with the 3-and-D. And I don't see him providing much more out of that. So if he can end up being a starter at 12, that's a good pick for the Hawks. But I probably would have went for a more natural 2 guard. But if that's who they saw at 12, I'm not going to totally disagree because how valuable 3-and-Ds are in the league and how expensive they're going to be this offseason.
Yeah, I think this pick shows people how deep this draft was for a lot of teams, because there were probably teams who had Taurean Prince as a second rounder, and there was a team who had him as their 12th best player. So it's just kind of interesting. Teams' draft strategies, they just go for their best player on their board. I don't really know a lot about Prince. I know he's supposed to be a 3-and-D guy. And obviously the lazy Jay Crowder and DeMar Carroll comparisons I see a lot.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll kind of see how he goes. He's like 6'7", I think. So he's got some size. Supposedly a solid defender. Admittedly, I haven't watched much film or really anything on him. I think I watched one Baylor game this year, and he didn't really stand out except for, oh my God, look at that guy, he has sweet dreads. Mm-hmm. So I guess we'll see where that goes for the Hawks.
Yeah.
Then Papagiannis. Go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, if I were them, I probably would have taken Valentine, who we'll talk about right now.
Yeah, Papagiannis goes at 13, who we talked about. Just inexplicable. Go Kings. Then the Bulls take Denzel Valentine, guy who was runner-up for Player of the Year at Michigan State. Everyone does another lazy comparison to Draymond Green, and I don't really see that in his game. But Denzel Valentine, a guy who dominated the college ranks, stayed all 4 years. What do you think about Denzel?
Competitor, yada yada, yada, all that, stereotypical stuff.
Yeah.
I like his game. He seems destined for the bench, and that must be what Chicago is drafting him for because they have Jimmy Butler, and seems like they really want McDermott to start at the 3. So Denzel can really be a great bench player who maybe he can knock off Tony Snell, who's pretty terrible. Um, I like his. Does a bit of everything. If he's able to stay healthy and hit a consistent three, he'll be a very good player for. He'll have a successful career, and if he's in the right situation, he can really thrive. I like to watch him at Michigan State. Watch him play Big Ten ball against Maryland. He's always just making plays. But it's tough to really analyze a guy that's older than most of his competition. But you know, he's got the success on his side, the winning success. He's got Izzo. Izzo coached him up, and there's as you can see, there's been a lot of success with Michigan State players recently. Um, and I think it's a solid pick for Chicago. Not the upside pick, especially with the hole at point guard.
Mhm.
But I'm not going to fault them for it, and it's a safer pick. And I'd be pretty excited if I were Chicago fans.
Yeah, I tend to disagree with you a little bit, and I don't really like Denzel Valentine's game as an NBA player. I loved him in college. But for some reason, this tweener kind of do a little bit of everything thing has become now like this sought after tools in the NBA just because of Draymond and how the game has kind of gone. But Denzel Valentine wouldn't have been a first round pick, I don't think, like 3 years ago, where that was seen as such a bad thing. Like he doesn't really do one thing super well. A lot of people are saying, oh, maybe he can be a backup point guard in the league, like he can play some point. And I'm like, I think a lot of point guards are a lot faster than he is, going to shut him down. And he won't be able to drive. So then he's really just a shooter who kind of cogs up your offense. So I don't really see how he fits in the NBA. But I mean, Hoiberg with his forward-thinking offensive style, I guess if he can fit him in somewhere, maybe it works. But obviously, in the late lottery, it starts to become a little bit of a crapshoot. Not that the NBA draft in itself isn't a crapshoot,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't know. I don't really love the Denzel Valentine pick.
Yeah, fair enough. We'll see. I just think he, at worst, is a role player, but
Mm-hmm.
I don't. Yeah, I agree that his game it doesn't. I don't see his game translating to anything more than a guy. He can't be relied on for scoring or anything like that.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. So we're not going to go through the rest of the draft. We'll just kind of like, do you what picks did you like
Yeah.
in the rest of the
So
first round?
I'll just run through a couple things and then you can wrap it up.
Okay.
Um, Obviously the classic Spurs diamond in the rough. Solid pick, kind of like with the Patriots in the NFL. This one was actually, he fell to them. DeJounte Murray out of Washington, like Marquise Chris, his teammate, athletic, lot of potential. So we'll see what they can do with them. They really need athleticism in the backcourt with how old Tony Parker is, and Patty Mills does all right, but just classic Spurs pick. So everyone's nervous about that. I really like the Sixers did. Uh, both of the foreign guys were projected to go much higher in most mock drafts. They were able to get both of them, who both should provide shooting and athleticism and defense on the perimeter, which they are largely lacking. And if they can hit on one of those, that really worked out for them. And then for my favorite picks in the last part of the round, I really liked another shooting guard for the Nuggets, Malik Beasley. I thought that was great value. The only thing is now they have a real clutter at the shooting guard position.
Yep.
So it'll be interesting to see what they do with that. Maybe Will Barnes available, who's on a steal of a contract. And then I also like the Bryce Johnson pick for the Clippers, who he'll be able to come in, provide energy off the bench, get some rebounds, put the ball in the basket. Hopefully be a solid role player is something they've been missing for quite some time. Relying on Josh Smith has been pretty rough.
Yeah, you named a lot of the guys I like. Timothé Luawu. I'm a big fan of elite measurables, crazy good athlete. Shooting stroke is a little inconsistent, but all the potential in the world. As you basically took my point right out of my mouth. Malik Beasley is a guy who I love, but I just don't see how he's really going to get minutes. So I don't really love the situation he's in right now. Um, Obviously, we talked about Malachi, a guy who I think can be a really good NBA role player, not necessarily a star. Dejounte Murray, one of the steals of the draft, could have gone all the way at 10 to the Bucks, dropped to the Spurs. They'll bring him along slow, and could be the predecessor to Tony Parker there. Henry Allenson, a guy from my school, Marquette, that I like, dropped due to defensive concerns, which I understand. She shed a lot of weight a couple years ago, and they say his feet are still really slow. But if he ends up getting a little faster and a little quicker, he could be a real steal to draft. Great offensive skill set, and he fits in really well next to Drummond there. So those are the guys who I tend to like. DeAndre Bembry is a guy who I like, but with the Hawks, he'll have a minor role, I think. Kind of see how he fits in there. But overall, I think the back end of the draft was like there wasn't a lot to like love about it. Like there were a lot of picks. It's like, oh, well, we could see him working out, but there wasn't any guy aside from Dejounte Murray who I saw really being a huge steal. Bryce Johnson is a guy who was really productive in college, and I think he'll help the Clippers' depth in their front court. And then Damian Jones is another guy who I kind of liked for Golden State. Just kind of like, oh, well, this is Festus Ezeli insurance is how I see that pick.
Same
So
school.
Yeah, a lot of guys being drafted for positional need, which is nice to see because a lot of times they just go after the big home runs. But yeah, I think that'll wrap up our NBA draft podcast. If we missed anything, you can yell at us on our website, 5angrymen.com.
Or on Twitter. Don't forget Twitter at 5angrymen. I will just shit on the Celtics one last time. Their 2 picks after the lottery, 2 foreign guys. Never heard of Gershon Yabusele in my life. Zizic I've heard about. You know, they do need a center, but whatever. I don't know. Don't feel bad for him, but I think Ainge let his fans down.
Yeah, definitely not the best night for the Celtics. Yeah, they just really didn't get much better, and that's really unfortunate with how many picks they had. They ended up having to take 6, I believe, out of the 8 picks they had, which is just ridiculous.
One second round note, though, I will say Demetrius Jackson, 45. That's a good one, but they already have Rozier, Marcus Smart, so he's probably not going to get any looks. And of course, the real winners of the draft are the New York Knicks. So attend this podcast just because they always win every draft, even if they don't have any picks.
Yeah, I tended to love the second round. I think a lot of teams got a lot of great players in the second round, which is weird to say.
Diamond Stone.
Diamond Stone, he's another good one. Malcolm Brogdon, a guy who I love.
Yeah, the Bucks got him. That was a good pick. I really wanted the Knicks to get anyone, but
yeah,
we got Marshall Plumlee on a guaranteed deal, so we'll talk more about that maybe a little later. But
maybe we have a Marshall Plumlee podcast. What do you think?
Maybe we can get the Plumlee brothers on our podcast.
That'd be huge. I would love that. That'd be great. All right, well, Jack, it was great talking to you. Just if you have any questions or anything about our draft, anything you think we missed, comment below. You can check this out on SoundCloud or our website. See you later.
All right, pleasure speaking with you.